Welcome to our show host series. I'm Christine Barrett, the owner of Worthville Media, and we're on a little bit of a summer schedule. You may notice every other week post on our YouTube channel because it's summer and there's a lot going on in the world. And sometimes I think when there's a lot of media focused in one area, it's okay to take a break from media in other areas so that we keep sane. And I think the more I talk to clients about their energy levels over the course of a year of media making, specifically show hosts and media creators. I just wrote an email about this week to our email list. Like, it's so important to take strategic breaks. So just an FYI or a PSA, whichever way you want to think of it. If you're making less media this summer in 2024, like, that's okay. And I would just recommend you take the extra time to recharge and kind of come into a peaceful place with yourself. But what I want to talk to you about today is sort of a mid-year state of the union of podcasting for personal brands. I think at the start of the year and at the end of last year, at the end of 2023, I shared a lot of trend forecasts, a lot of my own recommendations of where I was seeing the best opportunities for show hosts who are personal brands. And so I kind of wanted to do a check-in. It's been at least 6 months. I want to kind of give you what I'm seeing, my thoughts, some suggestions, some maybe strategic advice that if you are a show host, a personal brand, a media creator, and you're kind of trying to think through like where are my best opportunities in the rest of the year and going into the next year, I have some thoughts. So let's call this a mid-year check-in. We do a mid-year check-in with all of our clients at Worthville Media. So even if you may or may not be a Worthville Media client, let's do a mid-year check-in on the opportunities specifically in podcasting. And I'm again kind of tailoring this to personal brands who podcast and or YouTube. Kind of becoming the same thing if you're talking in the chat show realm. YouTube has definitely become like the number one place people are consuming podcasts. And so when I say YouTube podcasting, I don't mean all of YouTube or all of podcasting. I'm talking about chat shows kind of led by personal brands that may or may not have video first in their format. I think the number one thing I want you to be aware of is that the most interesting opportunities, the most lucrative opportunities, the most creative opportunities I'm seeing for personal brands right now are coming through much larger entities who have existing audience, which if you listen to my end of year recap and my trend forecast, you won't be surprised to hear. But I have noticed even in the last 6 months, sort of even doubling down on that trend. As podcasting is kind of transitioning into its 2.0 chapter, we kind of saw this mass shift in 2023 around the economics of podcasting, the opportunities for show hosts and production teams. And I think even more so than 6 months ago, I'm seeing the best opportunities coming from partnering with large organizations, existing brands that have, big marketing budget and a large audience who are really interested in tapping into the content marketing channel that podcasting and YouTube provides. You see a lot of hiring right now for content marketing managers or producers for content marketing, and so many big brands are looking for the video and audio component of their content marketing strategy. And most of the time, this is coming from a producer perspective, having worked with much talent across many different formats and industries and brands. Most of the time, the talent isn't already in-house at the brand. You're really lucky if you're part of a big brand organization that happens to have media trained talent who also happens to have time to host a show. Like, that is such a rare combo. And so I want you as a show host to just remember, whether or not this is the first time you're hearing this, that big brands are really starting to pay attention to video and audio content as an amazing content marketing channel. And they have existing marketing budget, they have existing audience, and a lot of times they're going to rely on a production team or kind of a, head strategist on their content marketing team to find the right show host and the right talent to come together and kind of make the magic that podcasting and YouTube can offer. I'm seeing a lot more openness from big brands to partner with outside talent. Partly because we're just seeing more of that and there's more awareness and there's more context, but partly because in kind of a volatile or sluggish economy, when brands that have existing audience and marketing budget are looking to kind of make the most of that, they need to feel confident that if they invest in a whole new arm of content, like maybe a video channel or an audio channel, they don't want to just like putz around. They really need to feel like they can bring in talent that knows what they're doing and can deliver a really quality product that will, enroll their audience to becoming customers or upsell or spread word of mouth, fandom. So that's the number one thing I wanted to update you on. My kind of trend forecasts from the end of last year, I think, have definitely played out. It isn't a free-for-all. There are limited spots. Not every brand in the world is like jumping on this. A lot of brands have already tried podcasting and they may not have used experienced media talent, so they might have abandoned their show. We've seen that with certain brands who maybe put in a lot of investment and ran a show for a couple of years and didn't see the results they were looking for. And it doesn't mean the show wasn't a good idea. It oftentimes had to do with the talent that they brought in, whether that was like someone in-house in the company who wasn't the best fit, or whether the economics of podcasting, maybe they did hire an awesome outside production company and brought in great talent, but the investment they put in the show may no longer be sustainable because of how economics have changed. And so I'm seeing like great award-winning shows that maybe are on hiatus, like looking for a new production company, looking for a new talent. And I'm also seeing brands that have never gotten into podcasting being really interested in developing it, but they're savvy now. They're not just like, oh, this is a fun, wild new frontier, like let's just get into it. I think everyone's wised up now, especially, chief marketing officers and executives have realized you can't just throw somebody in front of the microphone and record and put it out there and have it be a great show. So I think this is a good news situation. There's obviously caveats here, like you have to be really good at being a show host to attract this kind of opportunity. You need to have a good body of work. You need to have those skills. But I think it's really valuable to see that more and more large brands are hiring content marketers who they want to have that expertise. And they oftentimes are saying, hey, we need you to already have a network and know how to hire talent and, freelancers to produce. I think that's really exciting. As a producer who's worked in the space for 10 years, knows a lot of talent, knows a lot of great, production teams. I think this is something that we've been waiting for kind of the big money to come in and be like, yeah, we see the value here and we want to hire the qualified talent to make it for us now that we're kind of through the first decade of just Wild West, everyone figuring it out. So if you're a show host who has experience already hosting a show, you've kind of been through the learning curve and you have a body of work and you understand how to present yourself as a show host, I think there's some really cool opportunities. It takes work still to find the right brand and the right alignment and to figure out how to pitch yourself. So I obviously recommend either working with a producer or a PR expert who has specific experience in pitching, podcast opportunities. But I do think it's really worth it to pay attention and realize what we were forecasting 6 months ago is happening, even in kind of a sluggish economy with a lot of instability going on in the market. Brands are understanding the long-term value of this kind of content marketing, and you can be a really valuable asset to them that they will pay for if you can kind of present yourself and get into the right conversation with them. So that's point number one, I would say, is an update from 6 months ago. Point number two, and I kind of alluded to this in that first point, is that a lot of the award-winning shows that kind of turned the most heads, had, the most beautiful productions over the last few years, really have sunsetted. Largely, with a few exceptions, most of kind of the most beautiful studios that were producing branded podcasts, as well as a lot of the shows that were winning the awards, have either been sunsetted or shut down. And part of this is, like I said, the economic shifting, chapter 1 wrapping up, chapter 2 opening. But we're definitely seeing a shift of kind of a consolidation of production budget and opportunity going to like the big studios, the big companies that can kind of weather and be much more efficient with the payroll and economics of production. And so I think if I was a personal brand right now who'd been kind of funding my own show and was trying to take it to the next level, I wouldn't focus so much on how do we make the money to pay the production company to take this show to the next level. I would focus a lot more on how can I strategically partner with a brand that's already putting budget towards this to kind of collaborate. And partly that's because I'm a fan of efficient money spending, and I just have seen these trends play out over the last 10 years. But partly because the people who've already established themselves, kind of those legacy shows who are, huge audiences, ad supported, they're just unattainable now to someone kind of starting out or in the first couple of years, unless you're already a mega celebrity and really good at hosting a show, which don't always go together. It's like the people who started this 10 years ago are so far ahead, I really don't recommend trying to emulate them. Like, they really are in another orbit. And I can say that as someone who produced one of those shows and was in the circle with all those show hosts and understand how those shows were built and where they got to today, kind of had a front row seat. So I'm saying this as like a friend to you, like just know that opportunity has passed and you didn't like miss the boat. The boat had limited seats and the people who got seats on that boat worked really, really hard and kind of built the boat while they were floating. So I'm not saying like, oh, it's this amazing opportunity you missed. Like, it was actually really crazy and hard and most people weren't up for it. But instead of trying to be like, I want to become one of those, top 10 podcasters who built the thing themselves, I would just say, I wouldn't go down that road. I don't see any opportunity there that's worth looking at anymore. They had a time and a place to do that, and that time and place has moved on, and let's look at where the really interesting opportunities are now. And like I alluded to in point number 1, the interesting opportunities now could involve a lot less of you paying your own way and a lot more of you getting paid, but not through sponsors and kind of that traditional model that came over from radio. I would say it's much more likely for you to get paid as a professional show host by a brand that hires you to be, the talent for their show. And that's cool in a lot of ways. It's more competitive. There's a lot less spots. It's not as much of a Wild West. And that's like neither a good nor bad thing. But I just want you to kind of, if you've been tempted to be like, if we just put in enough money and put in enough effort, like we'll get there. No. Like that chapter is already written. So that's kind of point number 2. The consolidation of where the production resources are not like the solo personal brand. Obviously, you can podcast as like a marketing channel for your own products and services forever and always. Like, duh. Yeah, of course, you can do that really cheaply in-house yourself. There's no reason you can't use the technology to do that. I'm talking about like a chat show as its own media entity that's like a revenue generating property on its own without selling your own products and services. So if that doesn't make sense, leave a comment and I can do another video to kind of break that down. But I've talked about it in other videos, so I'm sort of using a shorthand here. Okay, point number 3, and I'll wrap it up with this one. I think the other thing that's really interesting for you to know as a show host, as we kind of do this mid-year check-in on like where are the opportunities, I feel everything I see and look at with kind of podcasting 2.0 starting and podcasting 1.0 ending, it is most interesting to me right now to see the intersection between the skill sets you can develop as a show host for pretty low overhead if you just, record at home or in a local studio, and the opportunities that are coming in the world of live events and public speaking. Obviously, things are a lot different now than they were during a pandemic when everyone was just on Zoom all day. And there is a big difference now when you go see a speaker, either at a digital event or in person, when you can tell that they've put in the time to learn how to conversationally present topics that they're an expert at. And I think one of the things to be aware of here is that before the pandemic, there was kind of this very traditional speaking model, right? Where everyone could go in person to the big event and hear the speaker do their 30-minute keynote, and everyone kind of knew what to expect, and that was the standard. And now, through all of the things we've been through and all of the digital content and all of the like from home, less formal, much more authentic, there's a new demand for a high ticket public speaker or thought leader or person invited to a very cool event to be a presenter to have a different skill set. And there's such more demand for them to be able to have the emotional intelligence to like read a room and go off script and go where people are needing to be taught versus like, here's what I prepared, here's my 3 keynotes, here's what I can give you. Podcasting and show hosting is one of the best ways to develop that skill. You put in so much practice. It's such a more long-form conversational way to find your voice and learn how to speak on topics that you are an expert at, but without being in this like much more structured, formal keynote format or, webinar presentation format. I think what's helpful for you to know is that the more effort you put into becoming a good show host, the more you will attract really good speaking gigs, whether that's a Q&A, a panel, a moderator, an hour-long keynote, a 10-minute keynote, a 30-minute keynote. You will start to get invited into rooms and events and forums that you could be really excited about, but you have to be able to show that you understand the moment today and that it's asking for a very different kind of presentation personality than it did before the pandemic. And podcasting can be extraordinarily helpful in developing that skill. So that's just a plug for continuing to hone your craft, whether or not you choose to do it publicly or privately, funded by a brand, funded by yourself, large scale, short scale, whatever. It's worth it to continue to develop this skill because it's becoming more and more important for public figures to have this emotional intelligence that can kind of respond to an audience in a much quicker real time and talk with them instead of talking at them. Okay, those are my thoughts from the mid-year. I wanted to share this in the summer when things are a little quieter in the world of media creation if you're a personal brand, and while things are really wild in the world of big media. If you have questions or comments, you're like, what do you mean can go deeper into this? Feel free to leave a comment. I'm happy to answer. And obviously subscribe to the channel. We're going to keep bringing you show host tips, even if they're not every week this summer. And I'll see you in the next video.